Hi, Jeremy Crow here. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to kick your necromancy skills up a notch by learning how to recruit the dead. So if you haven't seen my video on Introduction to Necromancy yet, I recommend that you watch it. I'll put the link down in the description here, but you don't have to. But this video is for people who already have a basic fundamental practice related to death. So you will probably have contemplated the nature of death and your own mortality, the mortality of others. You will maybe have an altar for your ancestors. Maybe you've asked passed over ancestors for help in certain areas of your life. And maybe you've given them regular offerings, that kind of thing. Now, the next logical step to necromancy would be to recruit dead people who aren't from your family. So this is like building your team. So you're going to build your team with people that had skills or expertise in the area that you need someone to fill a role for in your team. So let's say, for example, you're a person that has a lot of personal enemies. Let's say maybe you're just a regular person doing their regular work at their regular job, but you have maybe 2 or 3 people at that job that are targeting you, that are specifically trying to get you fired, really, or sabotage you in some way. Maybe you are a very successful individual and you have a lot of people around you that are jealous and are trying to sabotage you. Or maybe you have a specific job that attracts enemies. Like maybe you're a politician perhaps, or something along those lines where you express very emotionally driven material and people react to it. And you need a security role on your team. Maybe you need somebody on your team, your spiritual team, that can handle the security function. Now, what you'll want to do is to recruit someone who is dead onto that particular team of your necromancy team, you could call it, who had some sort of expertise in that realm when they were alive. Now, a really easy one to do in this case would be a soldier, because there are a lot of soldiers, and it's often easy to identify who a soldier is based on their gravestone or the memorial that they have there for their grave. It could be marked on there that they were military personnel. Now, another role that you might need on your team, for your spiritual team, would be a healer. So you might want to pick somebody who was a doctor or a physician or some sort of healer in general when they were alive. You might need a role for knowledge acquisition. So you might want to pick somebody who in their life was a teacher or a scientist, depending on what knowledge branch you are interested in. That sort of thing. You get the idea. So you're going to have to do some research to find who you are trying to recruit. Now, the next step, once you've identified an individual that you'd like to recruit into your team, well, first off, use your intuition to determine whether or not you think this will be a good fit for your team or not. But assuming that your intuition is telling you to go ahead, oh, there was a little thing on the camera there. Sorry about that. Assuming that your intuition tells you to go ahead, you're going to want to acquire some sort of physical basis. So what I like to refer to as a relic of the individual. So now there's different classes of relics. So the number one top class of relic would be like a part of a person's body. But I'm not recommending, I'm not suggesting digging up somebody's grave and stealing part of their body or anything. That's completely ridiculous. It's illegal and unethical, and I'm not suggesting to do that. I'm just explaining to you what a first-class relic is. Now, a second-class relic would be something that the individual used a lot or wore when they were alive. Now, that could be a piece of clothing. It could be like maybe they had a fancy pen that they used when they wrote, or anything along those lines. Jewelry is great for that. That would be a second-class relic. Now, something that is intimately related to that individual and even touched them and that they interacted with when they were alive. A class 3 relic would be something that has touched a first or second class relic. So it's almost like being around a relic can put some relicness into something else. So a classic example of this would be graveyard dirt from the grave of the person. Now, again, this would be something that may not be ethical to harvest from the person's grave, but you may be able to do it in a respectable way as long as you are very discreet. And make sure to ask the dead person first. And the way you can do that, I like to do a simple divination. I always have a deck of cards on me at any given time. And what I'll do is I'll shuffle with the question in mind, and I'll flip 3 cards. 3 red cards, like diamonds or hearts, that's a solid yes. 3 black cards, like spades or diamonds, that's a solid no. If you get a solid no, just move on. If you get a kind of no, which would be 2 black, 1 red, I would also just move on. They're not really into it, especially for your first recruiting attempt. Now, if it has 2 red, 1 black, that's sort of a, well, maybe, but what is in it for me? Now you may have asked for favors from ancestors previously, like I mentioned earlier, and asking an ancestor spirit for a favor, like, say, for example, you might ask an ancestor to speed the recovery of your nephew, or you might, like, now, if they were a very nurturing person, now you might ask them to help you with making a good impression at your job interview or something, if they were a very charismatic individual, that your ancestor, or some basic little things like this that you might want to ask them for general basic needs or whatever, and they're just usually going to do it because they're happy to help you because you are their descendant. They're your ancestor. It's a natural inclination to help your offspring, right? And your descendants. But with somebody who is not an ancestor spirit that you're trying to recruit, it's not going to be quite as straightforward as that. Now, just as an example of what happens when you're alive, I mean, as above, so below, kind of thing. If you were to ask a friend or a family member for a favor, assuming that you have a good relationship with them, a lot of times they're just going to be like, yeah, of course, well, I'll help you out in whatever way I can. But if it's not a relative, or maybe if you don't have a good relationship with this person already, if it's a complete stranger even, and you say, hey, do you think you could do me a favor? They're going to be like, well, maybe, if it's within my realm of, ability, and maybe if there's something in it for me, right? So if you get that 2 red, 1 black, or you can do coins, flip a coin 3 times. Heads would be the positive answer, and tails would be the negative answer. So 3 heads is yes. 2 heads and a tail would be that maybe kind of thing. Now, you're going to want to offer them something before you take that physical basis from them. So it's generally accepted across basically every tradition around the world that spirits tend to be thirsty. I'm not sure why that is, but the spirits of the dead are generally thirsty. So if you have a bottle of water on you, you can offer some water. Just pour it out onto the grave, or wherever you happen to be where you're doing this work. Give a little bit of offering and then take your physical basis. So that physical basis could be graveyard dirt from the grave of the individual, or even just a little pebble or something. But like I said, make sure you do it in a discreet way. If you can't do it in a way that is respectful to both the dead person and any mourners, because they could walk up and see you there at the grave of their loved one. So for example, if the grave marker, the memorial stone is crumbling or broken a little, don't take rocks from the broken memorial. Especially don't break a piece off. That's very disrespectful, and it's not going to ingratiate you to the spirit. And if you piss off their relatives, you're not going to ingratiate yourself to the spirit either. You have to be respectful when you're doing this stuff. Another way that you could do it for a third level relic, like I was mentioning before, you could actually do a step even further removed. It's not quite as good, but you could do a photo of the grave. And so that's like a step removed. It's a photo of a relic, but that's a relic in itself as well. You could also have, like, say, the person was an author and they wrote books. You could buy a book that has their words in it. They may not have signed the book, they may not have ever even touched the book, but their heart and soul was poured out into those words when they wrote it, and then that got published. And that is I guess you would say, a third grade or third level relic, and it's still valid. If they were a painter, that would be actually even closer, because they painted the actual paint strokes, unless it's a print. So if you get a print, then that would be that third level, not second level. Maybe I'm getting the levels, but basically it's the actual body, the things that they used or were close with physically when they're alive, something that's touched that, and then something even beyond that. Another level of abstraction would be the fourth level, I guess, of relic. So any of those 4 levels of relic, if you can get one of those, you put it on its own little platter or stand, and you put that on a death altar, not your ancestor altar. This will be a separate death altar. And you establish communication with this entity, with the dead person, spirit, or soul. You will contact that person through divination. Like, you could do yes/no answers with the method I already just told you. You can use something a little bit more elaborate, like a tarot reading, if you need more details beyond just yes, no, maybe. But you will establish a connection with that entity. You'll find out what things that they like to give them offerings for. But the best way to do that is to give them tasks and reward them for those tasks. So you will ask them, okay, I would like you to do this task for me, and I want you to do it in this amount of time. Can you do that? And then if they say yes, if you get like a solid yes, then they'll just go and do it and say, okay, great, thank you very much, I'll be very appreciative, and I'll give you a little something, and you don't make any specific promises. And when the timeline is up, if the task has been accomplished, then you give them a little something extra special that you feel like that they would like. Or you just continue to give them their regular offerings, that you have your regular offerings, right? You keep up. That would probably be the best offer if they say, yes, I'll do that, because it's probably something that they would enjoy doing anyway, and you just give them their regular basic offerings. Now, if you have something that they're not quite sure that they want to do, if maybe it's like a 2 yes, 1 no, start negotiating. Start trying to figure out what they want for it. You don't have to accept what they want for it right away. You can make a counter offer. Now, if it's something that is beyond what you are capable of providing, one thing you can do is set another condition on that. Say, okay, well, I can't afford that, but if you can somehow increase my income level by this much, then at that point I'll start adding to your regular offerings by this much extra, right? And so you can make those kinds of situational, contextual negotiations with the spirit. And so what will happen over time, you'll give the spirit different tasks related to what they're wanting to do. If you get a solid no, that's probably something that they just don't do or can't do. So you'll get to know them over time. You'll develop a relationship with them. You'll get to know what they like, what they're good at doing, and various other pieces of information you'll discover about them. You'll get to know them. You'll build a rapport with them, and then they'll be a solid member of your spiritual team. And you can recruit several people, several souls or dead souls, to your team. And then you'll have, over time, like, you could spend decades doing this and never get bored of it, because it's just so vast. You can create a vast community of entities that you are working with. But there will be certain ones that you have special relationship with, and you'll discover that if you go through and practice this. So I hope you like this video. I do videos like this all the time, so if you like it, go ahead and subscribe so you can get notified when new ones come out. And until next time, stay lucid.